Holly Tower, Jim Bryant, Arlen Dirks, Jennifer Tift, and myself, Anna Ostendorf. Pam Rowe is joining us online, and Frank Norton, our superintendent, is joining us online. All right, first up is our Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll rise and do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go trees.
The only audience member.
And you're not sitting in the front row.
And I'm not.
All right. So our agenda is set because it's a workshop, so we don't make changes to that. First item on our focus is finance focus. Our first item on our workshop is finance focus. So we have Ms. Paradis to present to us. Treasurer's report.
All right, good evening. I apologize, I am not in the meeting. Do you want me to share my screen? I can join quick.
We have the paperwork in front of us, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just if there's something you want to show us on there. Otherwise,
So in your packet, there are, we'll start with the August Treasurer's Report as that comes up first. Are there any questions on the August Treasurer's Report? All right. Moving along, the next piece in your packet is a third look at our revenue and expenditure summary, comparing budget to actuals for last fiscal year. This is mostly audited data. I'm going to put one caveat in there. Our ed support contract that we settled, the retro payment still needs to be booked back to that. The auditors thought that was significant enough to hold off completing the audit until that was done. We hope to have that done this week. So that's, we're estimating that right now to be another $110,000
income or
out.
How will that affect, like, we have a contract to approve today on managers, directors?
Yep, that one goes into effect as of 7/1, which is this fiscal year. So that won't impact the audit at all.
And then the arena levy, real quick, showing a projected increase 4.38. Is that, did we not have that last year?
Can hold that thought till we get to that piece.
You're going through the whole summary.
Yep, I'm just gonna go through piece by piece and just take it one step at a time. Are there any questions right now on the budget? How that's turning out? All right. The next piece in your packet is review of audited fund balance data. You can see before the ed support retro, we are projected to gain about $538,000 into our unassigned fund balance, bringing that right around 15.7, 15.8%, which is a healthy position. As I noted in my notes there, that is just shy of about, about 2 months of expenditures. Lost my spot, hang on. But 1.9 months of expenditures. To put that in a different perspective. Are there any questions there? The other big change on this is the food service fund. We're seeing that go up about $200,000. One is the reimbursements we were under the free lunch program are higher than under the school nutrition program we're going to be running this year. And then we also had a number of staff vacancies we budgeted for that were either in and out throughout the year or we were never able to fill.
So, we always talk about having a fund balance of a certain percentage.
Yes.
Of expenditures or total budget. It's been used all the time.
Yep.
You put down 1.89 months, 1.9 months of expenditures. Is there now a change on that? Is it supposed to be 2 months, 1 month, 4 months? What is it?
No, our fund balance policy says 7% of expenditures. I just know when the public looks at this, they're going to say 15%. Wow, because most of us budget in our savings, we'd like to have, about 3 months worth of expenditures, right? That's what a personal finance person would say. So I'm trying to translate that into
Okay.
something a layman would.
And that's great. I just didn't know if we switched the thinking. I like the idea of layman.
Mhm.
But everybody has savings and plans for that rainy day event.
Mhm.
The dishwasher goes out, refrigerator quits, the furnace, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, lady,
Hi, sorry, I'm tardy. I was at the equity meeting that took me 20 minutes to find earlier.
oh,
Welcome. That's what I was calling all of you for. Where is this equity meeting?
All right. Do you want a second to catch up or?
No, keep going.
Okay.
I will just go in.
All right. Are there any further questions on ending fund balances? All right, moving on to enrollment tracking. You can see our enrollment as of last week. We are at $23.99 for students served, with 202 out as tuition. I'm using right now last year's ending tuition out numbers, as I won't have new numbers of the kids tuitioning out until all of the districts report their fall MARs, which will be November-ish. So I want to caution us there. It looks like we're going to be 38 students above budget, but I want to really caution if any of those tuition out kids that were out at the end of last year came back in, those numbers could really swing once we get that fall MARS data from the other districts in Minnesota. Any questions there? All right, the next piece in your packet, and I'm not quite sure what order this is in, is resident enrollment, kind of a history. I believe Mr. Dierks kind of hinted at this at the last finance focus, that he'd like to see kind of where our resident trend is going. And as you can see, from 2012-13 to 21-22, we are down 144-ish students or school-age students who reside in Red Wing.
So this is the number of students who reside in Red Wing who would be potential students,
Correct.
not whether or not they're coming here,
Correct.
just that they live in
They-
our
yep.
boundaries.
They are K-12 students who reside in Red Wing Public Schools, regardless of where they attend.
Got it.
The next piece is an updated levy analysis. So when we looked at this in in September, right before we adopted the preliminary levy certification, the Ice Arena levy was missing from this report. So right now it has been corrected. You can see that there is $276,326.18 on that line, compared to last year's $241,929. So it is up slightly. This is the loss we experience on our ice arena every year. We can apply to the state of Minnesota to have that reimbursed through property taxes. So if, as things were on September 28th, which looked pretty final, MDE or Goodhue County will take as it was on September 30th. So we're about 2 days ahead of that. Our revenue from the levy will increase 4.38%. Does that mean all of the taxpayers' taxes will go up 4.38%? Not necessarily, but it could. It depends on how your valuation changed as well.
Could you talk about what the reason is for that loss with the ice arena?
Ice arenas typically do not run a profit. So it is all our expenses less any rental revenue we have from outside agencies. Right now, we only have 2 outside agencies that are renting Ice Time.
And do you know top of your head how many school districts own their own ice arena?
Very few,
That's what I
less than a
said.
handful.
Less than a handful.
Most of
Some
them are
city-
owned by cities and counties.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the district would rent it for their programs.
Correct. Then we would have, instead of ice arena operating loss, we'd have a lease levy.
Okay.
So, mhm,
Or not have that big expense to run it too.
correct. Mhm. So we'll bring this up. I'll bring it up again in November if there are any changes. And then in December, we'll be looking at it for at the truth and taxation hearing, and then final approval on the second meeting in December. The last piece I have for you tonight is a change, is a student activity fund summary, SAF summary it's called, as of June 30th, 2022. Prior to this last fiscal year's audit, or the one we're going through right now, this would have been supplemental information in our financial statements. Abdo Eichenmeyers is pulling that out of our financial statements. So now I am required to bring it to you at least once a year so you can review the balances of our student activity funds. So this is me meeting that legal obligation.
And these are mostly funds that those organizations have raised themselves. It's not coming out of our budget.
Correct. These are all funds raised for students at the direction of, and then to be spent at the direction of those student committees.
Pam?
What about all of the sporting groups as well? Because I think they all have their own funds as well.
Those are managed by the Winger Sports Club, and those are outside of the school district's control and outside of the school district's books.
Can you explain why that is, Jackie?
I was not around when that was formed, but the Winger Sports Club is more of a booster club. And they're a 501c3, so they're separate. They would operate more like a parent advisory committee, which also is usually a 501c3 separate from the school district. With it not being in the school district's purview, they have a lot more leeway on things they can spend it on. If you're a student activity, say student council, they're limited to Minnesota state law on what student activities can spend that on. So I'm not sure why the separation was created. It's just been separate.
So one of the questions I've gotten from parents in the past, and recently even, is each of those sports teams are doing a lot of fundraising, and they each have their own accounts, which I get. But it seems like then when it comes time for, I'm just going to throw this out, say I have no ties to the soccer club, so I'm just going to pick on them for a minute. Say they earn $10,000 with whatever fundraiser they get. And then all of a sudden it's at the end of the year and they have a party and there's no funds. And so, I think I get that it's a entity outside of the school district, but I think there's some question about the transparency of those fund balances. And so it's good to know that we're not tied to those. It's not a school district entity. However, it makes me really nervous because it is going through our activities office. And so I think that at some point I would ask you, Mr. Norton, to circle back with Paul Hartman on how that's going, and if we need to shore that up a little bit and have some transparency, because there have been some questions about how that money is being spent, and then why isn't there money for things like let's get a pizza after the game or something like that. So anyway, those are the questions that are coming to me. So I will forward that on to you, Mr. Norton, to just kind of take a look at that further and maybe report back at a future meeting.
Mr. Brandt?
Thank you. Pam, I was Booster Club, basketball, all those when my children were going through, and Yeah, we did apply for the 501c, but we didn't have any ties to the school with funding. There'd be a request for different things to ask for from the Booster Club. We just had some criteria. Now, that may have changed over the years, so, but maybe that's all changed since I was on there now and they're going through the school. But we used to pay for the food for the end of the year banquet. We put grills out back, we'd grill and have food, because they had for a while, there's just one grade, we'd feed anybody that came, part of those funds, so, and that may have changed now, but.
Well, and I think part of the confusion is the Booster Club raises money through their sponsorships and whatever, and then teams can apply for those funds to be dispersed. But then individual teams also fundraise. Right now, the football team is fundraising cash for their account. And so I think it gets really convoluted, gets muddled maybe on who spends what on what. And it just gets confusing for people because of those varying accounts and how those are accounting for.
I get the idea that the team's going through, Mr. Hartman, I totally get that. That's totally different than the overall Booster Club.
Ms. Tift?
I took my name off.
Oh,
I was
sorry.
going to say the exact same thing Pam did. The Booster Club does their own fundraising, and then the teams are now doing fundraising too that's separate from it.
Oh, Becky,
Ms. Buck?
Yes.
sorry. So I would assume that perhaps the NASA and APAC is on here because federal funding and other.
Yep.
Okay.
These are funds these clubs have raised outside of district funding. So if they haven't raised funds outside of district funding.
But NASA was part with Black Student Union getting some funding recently from youth outreach.
Recently? Okay. It may not be on here because this is as of the end of last school year, if it was more recent than that.
Okay.
All right, that is all I have. If anyone has any other questions.
Great,
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Ms. Tower.
The request I had in email for you about,
Yes.
yes,
I've given that data over to Ms. Johnson and she's reviewing it.
excellent. I asked for financial information around GCD to kind of give to you all, but I would have given it to you and Mr. Norton. But I was just curious as to where it was. Just the UFARS codes and just different things that GCD reimbursed, or we reimbursed GCD for, and then salaries and benefits and all of that kind of stuff. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Next up are our interim superintendent goals and evaluation. So we have, were there changes to this, Mr. Norton, since last meeting? Or rubric?
What you received as far as the rubric is concerned I have not changed that. I wanted you to be able to view it from Wednesday. I haven't done anything with it. If you'd like to explain it a little bit further, I can do that.
That would be great.
Might be self-explanatory. Update a little bit of what we talked about at our last meeting, taking the goals that I initially brought in verbally basically to you on one occasion and tried to marry them into the standards to some degree. And so that's what you have in front of you is there. You can obviously see standards 1 and 2 aren't there. And we started with standards number 3 because that tied in to relationship building, relationship with the community, relationships with the police department, that kind of stuff. So one of the goals that I had was continuing to connect the community, Prairie Island, all of the communities together and bringing them and connecting the school to those entities. So that's a portion of that one. And then all of the rest of them sort of connect as well to some of the things that I talked about, instruction, all of those. The other part I'd like to be able to point out is if you're on that first page of that and it says standard number 3, for example. So what I would do as a portion of that, at the very bottom of that, it says comments or evidence. So what I would do then is I would just start to be able to put in those. That's just my part. So if you look at the very bottom of that, it talks about the law enforcement when they came in to speak with the board, updating the safety and emergency plans, just things that I've done along connecting to the community and keeping the school safe. So I just started kind of a list down on the bottom as examples of what you might be able to do as far as an evaluation. If this was something you adopted, that's kind of how I see being able to present evidence basically to you as to as I'm progressing. Now, obviously the list isn't, and all of them isn't going to be as long as others because one of them is educational and, connecting the education, making sure that teaching strategies within the classrooms, I can't get all of that done by December. We won't have that portion of that done by December. That's more of a year goal. But as long as we know that there's a plan to be able to do it, here's what the plan looks like. The teachers will increase their strategies on teaching toward the different cultures within, identifying student needs within the classroom that are specific and teaching to those. Those instructional strategies, we need to infuse those through Martina and myself and making sure that the teachers have that. But that's not going to happen by December. We're not going to be at that particular point. So that's more ongoing, that particular page within the evaluation. But I just wanted to give you an idea. You asked me to put something together that you might be able to use as a tool. This was just an idea for you to be able to utilize, one that I threw out to you probably 3 meetings ago. But now you have something more concrete, something hard copy in your hands to be able to look at.
And this is all based out of the MSBA's goals and standards-based superintendent evaluation. It's between MSBA and Minnesota Association of School Administrators. So it's not totally created out of thin air. It's based on an existing system, I guess, or established guidelines.
Right. It's kind of trying to meet the needs of the 7 board members that we have. Some wanted to be able to have comments driven. And so I left room on the bottom for evidence and comments that you might be able to type in. This is what I see. This is what I'm noticing. This is the direction that I see Mr. Norton going in. You want to be able to do that. At the same time, a rubric driven, which is above, giving you ideas as to where, the direction that I might be going in each one of those standards and each one of those sub standards within. You can pick and choose or delete as you see fit. It's your evaluation tool, but it is something that kind of tied in with what I saw the district's needs being in this very short period of time to get going on where do we want to go. And this is what we have talked about.
And I think even though, a lot of these can't be completed by December, we can see, work being done towards it and, evaluate kind of based on where we see things going or, even if it's not done, that there's motion towards kind of the finished goal. Ms. Howard?
Thank you. This is exactly what I was envisioning in my head when I talked about numbers and scoring and a baseline. Anecdotally, you can put on the bottom what it is that you've done to achieve some of these things in order to help us. And given the fact that you were handed a, big responsibility in terms of making sure that if we felt that there were deficit areas we can't expect you to fill those pieces in, like you said, 7 people's opinions of how we think things should move forward. What we didn't think was happening, we haven't completely measured before we ask you to measure how we think you're doing. So it's hard for us to, maybe collectively say, this is how we think Frank's doing versus where we think the baseline of the district was prior to him evaluating himself and us evaluating him. That to me is a whole separate evaluation system that I don't feel we need to enter into. Because we all will have varying opinions of that, and that could take another 3 months. I'm not asking for that, but I think it's really important that we recognize we're not asking you to do something where we were supposed to be managing a situation for 3 years and 6 months, and then to fix that immediately. So I like the idea of you putting down here what you feel you've done to accomplish or move into those numbers. And I think it's powerful if we can also put anecdotal comments about where we see to do the numbers. I don't recall, did we say we were going to have you score it and then we were going to score it and then compare the two? Or were we going to blend the two?
I don't know that we officially decided.
We didn't officially decide? Okay, is that what we're going to do tonight?
Good.
Yeah, because I think the sooner we can focus on something, the quicker we can be on a clear path of where we're headed. So, Frank, I really appreciate the work you put into this. And this is exactly what my brain was thinking. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ryan?
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to have some tool. I was not, this is nice. The only thing I haven't found on here, and I was hoping either we do it on this or how we're gonna do it. I don't see anything about relationships with the board on here. Are you meeting? Are you communicating? Are you discussing with things? If it's on here, I missed it. But I don't see anything on here, and I think we don't want to go down a path where we only communicate with a couple when we have a whole board. So I would like to see something somewhere about communication with board members. Yeah, I'd like to hear from you. Go ahead.
I can answer that. That's actually in standard number 1, Jim. So it'll just be me adding that in. So it's not in here because I stuck with the standards, and some of the direction that I heard last week from Ms. Rowe and others was to narrow it. But I can certainly add that in fairly easily. It just happens to be in standard number 1. I didn't put that one in because it would have been a 6th goal basically. But it's a fairly easy one to be able to add in, and it has several substandards underneath it. So perhaps I could just narrow those substandards to be able to and combine a couple of them just so that it's a little less daunting for you to be able to score or to be able to look at. I can do that.
Sure. I just don't want to go down the road and months later, we don't ever hear from you except at board meetings, and that's not fair to you or to us, so.
Yeah, I think that would be a useful thing to be able to add into the evaluation. But I think it's not one of your primary goals, in the sense that I think we want you to be communicating with us, at least in my opinion, communicating with us in the work towards all of the other goals. That it's something that should be kind of incorporated in, but isn't necessarily your focus.
Got it.
If that makes sense.
I'll respectfully disagree because we're 7 people and he's somebody that reports to us as a board, but either we work as a board or we don't work as a board. So that's my belief. So.
Anyone else?
It's good.
Oh, Ms. Howard.
So are we voting on this?
Not here.
No, not here. But are we voting on it? Or do we just say move forward? How do we do this? What's the next step?
You normally you'll come back with a revised thing as we just talked about at the workshop at a future board meeting.
So should we say by the next board meeting, we should have
just add in that standard one.
And then should we be putting it on the board agenda moving forward to make it an official?
I'll do that.
I don't think there's any need to come back to this group as a workshop.
No.
To us as a board agenda item, yeah.
Oh, Pam, yes, sorry.
I was just going to say, I agree with you, Jim. I think that's a really excellent addition because you're new to us, Mr. Norton, and we're new to you. And so I think, especially in this early time that we're getting to know one another, and you're a new part of our committee, our board, I think that's an excellent goal. To just add in there so that we do have some really good communication and we start off on a really good solid foundation of working together. So thanks for bringing that up, Jim. And yeah, I think if you can just put it in there, but really make it very simple so that, it's not too cumbersome, that would be really helpful in my opinion.
All right. Anything else are you back in the?
No, I'm not. I'm trying to get out of it.
Okay. Okay, anything else for superintendent evaluation? No, then we are on to policy 516. So we already have policy 516, which is about student medication. But this is a request to add a revision to it related to Narcan. So do you want to talk about it, Mr. Norton? You probably can do it better than me. Sure,
I can. We're asking the board basically tonight to look at this now, and then there'll be an emergency once we get into the, but for this particular portion of it, Narcan is something that is available through our SRO currently. But if he is not on campus, for example, he is the SRO for the district. So if he's over at the middle school, or he has something that's happening at the elementary level, or he's at the high school and the emergency is at the middle school, he's our sole person. That's Jesse right now. So if he's not available, we don't have a backup. And we would need to call 911 and the paramedics would arrive and they would have Narcan. Many districts now, and we're adopting basically that policy, many districts have Narcan available by their nursing staff on grounds. So we would be moving in that particular direction. The training would happen with them, but we felt that we should probably put that in policy with our under 516. So following this meeting, and if it is passed as an emergency, the training would begin as soon as possible so that there is an accidental overdose at any of our schools, we are prepared. Student safety, as you know, is the board's highest degree of emphasis. And we need to keep all students safe. And not having someone available because they're at another building is a little bit where we want to be able to make sure it's available all of the time. And in the absence of one individual, now we won't have that. We'll always have it on hands at every school to be able to administer. And the training goes along with that. We're prepared to do that as soon as this passes to move forward. Ms. Rowe?
I was just going to say, for the layperson watching, I wanted just an explanation of what Narcan is and what it does.
Okay. So it's a counter agency basically to an overdose. So if someone is overdosing, let's say on fentanyl or something like that, it counteracts that and allows them to breathe again. So if they are in a state of unconsciousness and they're not able to breathe on their own, it helps them to be able to, it counteracts that's the agent and that allows them to be able to recover. It's not a cure for it, but allows us to be able to at least get them to a point where they are resuscitated and now they can be transported to the hospital for care.
Mr. Dick?
The policy itself, go ahead.
There we go.
I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button here. At the agenda committee meeting, it was brought up about this policy revision, and after explaining what it was, I said there is a procedure that we can follow to get this through in an expedient manner if we feel that's necessary to go that route. We don't know when the situation could arise where we would need to administer this and where people are. And I felt at the meeting that we should follow the plan to get this approved immediately and then do the regular policy revision later, because if something happened in the next month or so and we didn't have the student resource officer, emergency personnel couldn't get here quick enough, I'd feel terrible that we didn't take every step to try to save somebody. Is it going to happen in the next month? Probably not, but it happens sometime, and it could happen in the next month. So I'm a very strong proponent for us to revise this policy with the expedited procedure, and then continue on to get this in our policy long-term after that. We have up to 1 year on the expedited procedure to be in effect. And then after that year, if we don't do it, then this would fall off. So I'm not quite sure 100% what's in the agenda packet for the workshop, but a red line version, I believe, is in the packet for the regular meeting if the person wants to see where the changes come in place. And I think it's a great thing that we are looking at it, and it will be a valuable tool if the situation arises.
Ms. Tower?
Oh, thank you. And I think it's important to note that it's not just for us thinking that a child or a student could overdose. It could be a staff person, it could be a visiting community person, it could be, anybody on school property. So I'm in full support of it. Much like what Arlen just said. I'm not gonna rephrase what you just said, but I'm in full support of what
I'm sure
you
you
just
do
said.
better.
Not gonna try.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. Arlen, thank you for bringing it up at the meeting to bring forward. The world's changing. Who thought of this 15 years ago? You had this capability to do this. But we hear stories about it in the communities, and Mr. Norton's right. We need to get something set up now, because only certain people at this point can administer that. Having more people here for exactly the things that have been said by my colleagues here be good. So yeah, I think it's, I'm ready to go approve it at the regular meeting as an emergency, and then just earmark it in 6 months to come back and approve it for a new change or whatever it is there, Mr. Norton, on regular policy update. So.
Any other comments, thoughts about this? Okay, so that will pop up in our agenda for the regular meeting here coming up. Anything else? Any other things with teaching and learning, operations, human resources, other general topics? Anything new and interesting for us to discuss? Yes, Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. I emailed Martina and Frank about the MCA presentations. Either we can do it as a workshop or a regular board meeting. I'd like to have a conversation about our MCA scores, because I'm getting calls and emails from community members. And I think we need to annually have a discussion on that, because the numbers come up and people get the numbers and think this or that, and we just need to know that, have a discussion about it. We all know that the state changed their way they score it, but not everybody does. So having that and then have that available to people will certainly help. So at some point soon, I would like to have that. Wherever you want to have it, in a regular board meeting, which is probably the best place, or a workshop, either one.
Anybody else?
That falls under teaching and learning.
You guys want me to give you some quick? Mr. Bryant emailed and I said that World's Best Workforce, we will address this with our strategies moving forward. So Jennifer was at our district advisory committee where we talked loosely about where we've been, where would we like to go. You're right in the fact that for those families who opted out of testing, they are considered does not meet or not proficient. And so that is actually calculated into how we're actually performing in math and science and reading. I'm actually working with Robin Cagle to put a one-pager together, so it's kind of a nice snapshot for all of us, so we can get that maybe on a workshop. But know that the expectation of our world's best workforce is that I have to present that to you probably in November, maybe December, for you to get the vision of what we're kind of looking at in terms of teaching and learning and the structure moving forward to impact achievement.
Do you mind if I go, or should I put my little hand in?
Okay.
Have you had a chance to look at our current World's Best Workforce and had an opportunity to kind of see where we're at with that?
Yep, so when we just did a rewind, I keep pointing at you because you're at the.
I missed it and I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We did a rewind, so this is where we're at, what the goals were set for last year, 21-22. This is how we performed. These are the strategies we had in place, and so now I'm working with the teaching and learning team to really refine, because there is a lot, but how do we go more than just a mile wide and inch deep to really have impact on our student achievement? So some of you may know that we did learning walks. We started learning walks last week. Today we're at Twin Bluff. I have one more at Burnside and the high school to go through for all baseline learning walks. So it's very interesting what we're finding out instructionally, not content. So what we've put in place in terms of literacy curriculum, core curriculum, but really what are teachers doing to instruct, which is another component that I think needs to be kind of weaved in to some of our practices. We are doing some things really well and some things we really don't have a structure for. So there's some opportunities. But again, that's kind of baseline. That kind of gives us another picture besides what is that one snapshot of the NCEA math, reading, and science tell us. We also have our fast math, our fast reading, our early reading data, which is finished now. So I can actually give you a photo album. This is what NCEA showed us from the spring. This is what we have right now as additional photo album pictures that tell our story. So that's what I'm working on right now for all of you. So stay tuned. It's like the trailer. Lots of good things coming, lots of opportunities too. So it's not perfect, but we're going to kind of fine tune this year. So
Does World's Best Workforce have a new name now? Am I just imagining that? I thought there was a name change.
World's Best Workforce has 5 components. You might be thinking about like read well, by third grade.
I just thought there was something like the name of that was going to change, but maybe not. Maybe
I
I
haven't heard
dreamt it,
anything
I
yet.
imagined it.
We'll have a comprehensive plan plus our slide deck. So those actually have to work in tandem. The comprehensive plan will actually tell the whole story, where we've been, where we're going. And then kind of the slide deck that all of you will see will just be a snapshot, but then supplemental to that this year will be kind of a storybook of really what direction we're going, without kind of eliminating where we've been, but really kind of creating a pathway. I also want to design that so that it's very user-friendly for our community and our teachers and our leaders to recognize this is the pathway and how it aligns to our strategic directions, the form that we have, and make sure that we're in alignment before our next strategic plan is created. So that was a lot.
It was.
But it sounds so great.
If-
Thank
I'm
you.
super excited. If you guys could do walkthroughs or learning walks, there's some really great things in place. But, 2 or 3 things that we can start tweaking a little bit, I think will have a big impact, so.
Okay,
Thank you. Anyone else have anything? Okay, so it is 5:44. We cannot start our regular meeting until 6. So if we want to adjourn, we would have a 15-minute recess.
So
There's a motion in a second.
Okay, so motion by Ms. Tower.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bryant.
I thought she was saying you were going to pay the motion.
Oh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion carries. We are adjourned at 5:45. We'll reconvene at 6. Are there things for me to sign in here? First one. Okay. o'clock on Monday, October 3rd, and I will call to order a regular meeting of the Red Wing School Board. We have Holly Tower, Jim Bryant, Arlen Dirks, Jennifer Tift, Nikki Buck, and myself, Anna Ostendorf here. Frank Norton is joining us virtually, as well as Pam Rowe. And Pam will not be voting, unfortunately, because it's a last minute change of plans. Okay, so I will have Nikki Buck read our mission statement.
Do we have to approve the agenda first?
That's after.
The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
All right, next up is the meeting agenda. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add or modify on the agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve that.
I'll move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Okay, motion to approve the agenda by Mr. Dirk, second by Ms. Tift. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. So that carries 6-0. All right, in our packet, we have our educational plan. So just direct your attention to that. Next up are recognitions and upcoming events. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share?
Saturday?
But this is just for students of his class, so. But the Red Wing Fall Arts Festival is this weekend, and as many of you know, I am a part of the Dakota Mural Project, and that will be the first opportunity that you get to see and work with the mural artist and the host of the community engagement sessions, and just kind of maybe do a small version of what you think that you would like to see on the mural. So if you don't have anything going on this weekend, be sure to stop down to the.
Do you know where that will be in the Fall Arts Festival?
I'm not sure. I know they were discussing location, so.
Anything else? All right. Next up is public comment. We don't have anyone signed in for public comment, and I have not received any email public comment. Have you, Mr. Norton? Nope, okay. So we will keep on moving. Next up is our referendum planning. What do you have for us today, Ms. Robertson?
I just wanted to give you a quick update. We have done 6 presentations. We have just a network item this Friday at AM Espresso, then on Monday night, it was changed. I believe Dr. Wagner and I will be presenting to the Red Wing City Council, and Holly and Jim will both be there. And then at Women's Network on the 12th, I hope, Pam, you can hear me all right. I had Pam Rowe down, so if Pam, you need a lunch for that date, I'll order you one. That will be here in J108, and we're going to be talking about the referendum, and we're also going to be talking about the promises kept from 2018, especially talking about some of our career path options. Then also that evening, we've scheduled a district open house, so where the public is welcome to come between 4:30 and 6. All the students' cars will be long gone. You can just park right outside the parking lot next to the greenhouses, if that makes any sense, the Ag Department greenhouses. And people can just come and go. We'll be able to answer any questions that they have. And then we have a series of other events that we will be, groups that we'll be presenting to. And they will also have a table at the Business Expo on the 18th of October. We'll be doing that with the community education. So excited about those. And so again, we have about 8 more appearances or opportunities to connect with the public. I met. And then just so that you, for your, in the packet is something called staff do's and don'ts and a referendum. And we are meeting with staff in individual buildings, just part of their regular staff meetings to remind them about that when they're on their own time, they're free to advocate or take any stance they want on the referendum, but during the school day, our job is to educate children, and that's what we're focused on. That's pretty much all I have for you. If for some reason the school board is intending to be, have people attend the open house, you're welcome to attend. We just need to, if you want us to, I have to make sure that Lisa puts a disclaimer on there that there's a potential that a quorum will be present. So please let me know and we'll get that taken care of. So I
Thank
think
you,
that's all I got.
And that open house was the 12th?
Yes, Wednesday from 4:30 to 6 here at the high school.
Okay. Next up is school board reports. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Howard.
All right. The Community Education and Recreation Advisory Council met on September 21st. Yes, I'm reading this. So there was a great turnout with 25 community members in attendance. Caldwell Family Center, Brittany Keel, Director of Caldwell Family Center, reported on Conscious Discipline. It's a classroom management system that is showing measurable success both for the classroom, the students, the teachers, and the support staff. I encourage, I'm saying this separately, I encourage you all to Google Conscious Discipline if you haven't done it. It's extremely cool. Very humanistic approach to just dealing with people of all ages. So it can even work at home. The Red Wing Public Schools referendum, Ann Robertson gave an overview of the upcoming referendum. She highlighted that the vote is for a renewal of an expiring operating levy and that is not a tax increase. Summer fall program highlights: over 18,000 people attended the Red Wing Water Park this summer. I was there. In partnership with the City of Red Wing and the School Food Service Department, they were able to offer 500 $5 season pool passes to children on free and reduced lunch. Kids Junction had 393 kids in attendance this summer, and they went on 90 field trips. Community Rec and Park Naturalists had over 70 youth offerings, serving over 700 youth. And the fall brochure has been published. Check out the many offerings for all ages and abilities online, in person, or call the office to receive your free copy today. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Dent?
As Ms. Wagner, or Dr. Wagner mentioned earlier, we had the district advisory committee meeting on September 27th. And that was led by Dr. Wagner and Mr. Wendland. We heard from Dr. Wagner some information about what was presented with the World's Best Workforce Plan, and we will be hearing more about that. One of the things I wanted to mention about this particular committee is that it's made up of district staff, teachers, but then also students, parents, and community members. And one thing that was really missing from the last meeting was community members and parents and students. We had one student, thankfully, but we need more. So we need a better representation of our community at this particular committee. That's what this committee is all about, giving direction, ideas to us, to the district, on future goals and plans. And I know it's been a successful committee doing that before, working with flight paths in the last couple of years when I was on it. That was a big focus. And now Dr. Wagner and the rest of our district staff have big plans moving forward, but we need the input from the rest of the representatives from our community. So if anyone is interested in that, please contact Dr. Wagner or myself, and I can forward that on. So thank you.
Is there any criteria to be a member of that committee?
That I'm not sure.
We can have parents with and without children currently in the district. Pretty much it's all encompassing. If you are a Red Wing community member, a student, just engaged in the community.
Because 60% of our voters don't have children.
And that's okay. We can have parents without students currently enrolled.
And grandparents?
And Sorry, is the next meeting November 29th?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just trying to find that.
But if we need a virtual option, if somebody emails for a virtual option, we can get that set up.
So if somebody wants to join, they should contact you?
Mhm.
Okay. Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. You probably did, I know Ann's done a good job about letting people know that we have these different things people will join, so maybe we can put it on our website or newsletter, getting people instead of just, great here, but let's get the word out everywhere we can.
Jennifer, would there be a possibility if you could get like a flyer? Because if you create a flyer in our community, that's kind of speaks 1,000 words for us. I could put it on our social medias for Anna as well. So.
Mr. Bryant?
We had our LMC meeting also on the 27th, and you'll be getting a report and request for approval of the 2023 healthcare insurance for school staff and retirees. You might want to sit down when you read it. It's going to be large. But however, the committee's worked very hard to look at alternatives, options too. A number of our staff live outside of this area and may not go to Mayo. Mayo is very, the cost came in quite high because Mayo is a primary one on the healthcare plan. But there's alternatives. There's going to be 6 plans. There's really only 5 that people are opting because there's one plan that one person's still on. Once that person's off, that sunsets. So there's alternatives, different deductibles. We're really striving for staff to attend or find out more about the alternative plans coming forward. So I just want to let you know that coming forward, we'll talk more at our October 17th meeting.
Anyone else?
I was waiting to make sure. Can I ask one question to Jim here? So there was bids that came in and then you evaluated and you got, how many different companies bid? Can you answer that?
I recall 4 or 5.
Okay, so it was a good broad range of participation.
Wide range of increase.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's all I had on that. On September 22nd, Holly was unable to make the GCED board meeting. She asked me if I could attend, so I did go there. Financially, they're doing okay. They received 83.9% of the revised budget and expended 92.39% of it at this point. There's currently 1.6 million in outstanding accounts receivable they're waiting payment on. Once those funds come in, there, the cash flow that they talked about having some issues with cash flow will even out for now. If I recall right, they're still waiting on the billing and payments from various school districts for the online, Five Rivers online money is, that sound right? I think so. Then also I had a report on the eligibility for maintenance of effort. I'm not sure how many of us here know what that is, but it has to do with our special ed funding. And you have to spend what you did the previous year, I believe it is, in order to get the full amount the next time around. But by being a member of the education district, all the districts are put together in that maintenance of effort standard. And with all the districts put together, there should not be any issue on funding through maintenance of effort for this upcoming year. On the business item, Holly previously mentioned about recording of board meetings and stuff. That was brought before the board at the meeting, and it was approved unanimously to record the board meetings at GCED. I assume similar to what we're doing here, and similar, I think Charlie's going to be involved in it a little bit from what I remember. And so GCED board meetings will be accessible for us to view as board members here if we want to see what's going on.
Do you know when that would start?
I believe it started now or very shortly, because there was an all running at the meeting, but
I feel like that meeting was, because I followed up, and I feel like that meeting was recorded. I don't know if it's posted yet, but the idea is that it'll be posted on their website,
But-
so you don't have to call and ask.
in order to get it, I have to go to the GCED board or website. And then I believe it's similar to ours, go to meetings and stuff to get there, so.
Okay.
That'll be a welcome tool that we as other board members can see what's taking place there. I felt left out for a long time. Only time I knew was if I was at the meeting.
Mhm.
So it was good to have that. I thank Holly for standing up for that in previous meetings and stuff, but anyway, that was put through. Next GC board meeting will not be until November. So I think that's a quick summary of that.
Yeah, thank you, Harlan.
Anyone else?
I attended the equity team meeting about 20 minutes late, about my stepson-in-law, so that's really important. But I walked in on a really cool thing, I guess. It was a compass, right? Courage, conversations, dialogue, sport. No, that's not what I wrote down. I wrote something else down. A compass process to go deeper in conversations about equity and inclusion. So I sat and observed. So I'm like, well, this is very equivalent to me in my world of mind, body, spirit, and emotions. So in special education and ADHD world, I've had to already learn this before I even graduated this building. So it's just worded differently for me, but pretty much the same idea. And she's talking about people's experiences, like, they're like, how do you get from point A to point B? And I'm in my head, I'm thinking, well, that's easy. You just do this, 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 and this, you know? So this is really nice. And I was gonna ask you if that video was available for our students, because we have a particular situation that you and I are working on. That one student, if she saw that explanation in that compass, it would click to her better than what mom's trying to. I'm sorry. Anyways, we always know I always use my family's examples anyways, and we're pretty good at that. So that is, I would like to maybe show the board that sometime, or.
We can go through the process too, if there's a work session we can replicate.
Yeah, so was he the trainer? Or
Dr. Glenn Singleton,
Yeah,
author, yeah.
very well spoken, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I've been trying to communicate this my whole life, and here he does it in just 2 minutes. So, but that's the beauty about having other relatives that can explain things differently for other people to understand. So I really, really liked that, and I think we should have it as a whole board demonstration.
Sure.
All right, anything else? Okay, then we are moving on to administrative reports. So Mr. Norton, you're up.
Okay, I have a few. The first one is a kind of a fundraiser that's happening at Burnside through our art department. So I just want to give you a little bit of a brief explanation of that. Leah Harris is the art teacher there, and what they're doing, it's enclosed in your packet, but what they're doing is that the students create the art, and then the fundraiser basically is that art can now be transposed onto cups or towels or shirts or whatever it might be of the student's own art. So they create it in the class, they give it to this company, they'll impose it on whatever it is that the parents want, and the parents buy that product. The money then goes to a mural that those kids will create as well. So kind of circulating around the art leading to art, and the parents being able to have that art for themselves as they're having their morning coffee. They're reminded of their own child at home or whatever it might be. So just informing the board, as we need to be able to do as far as fundraisers are concerned, and this one's fun. for our little ones. The second one I have in here is I'm required to be able to inform you that a taxpayer notice went out, and that went out in letter format. So we're required by mail to notify all taxpayers in the district for the state general election referendum vote that's coming up, and informing you that that did go out. The third thing is our online student reporting. And I think I've spoken with you, or at least notified you of something that we're working on within the district. And that should be going online soon. I need to get around to each one of the buildings. So rather than the parents having to phone in and say, this is where my student is, they're sick, this is what they're sick, this is why they're sick, parents can go in, and there'll be a button on the main screen of our district. They can click and they can type that information in. Once they click submit, that email then is sent back to them as that response, a response recorded, so that they know that that's been submitted and they have evidence that it was submitted. Our administrative assistants I assume our administrative assistants and our secretaries at each one of the buildings are going to be very relieved, because sometimes it can take an hour to an hour and a half listening to phone calls as they come in. If we've got 40 or 50 students that are absent on a day and each phone call is 2 minutes long, we've just absorbed an hour and a half of one secretary's time that's no longer there, because once it's recorded online, it goes to a spreadsheet. And rather than listening to the phone call, they simply have to be able to record it back into our Skyward system going down the line. And they can do this in probably 10 minutes as opposed to it's just an efficiency sort of a thing. An hour and a half, we can cut that down to 10 minutes. So that'll be coming online for all of the parents that are listening. That'll be coming out, and we will be getting information out through Ann, our communications. Ann, do you have anything to add to that? Ann has been helping me with that.
No,
She's there.
Fun Heroes, I think it's going to work really well, and we're running some tests.
Okay.
So it's good.
Okay. The fourth thing that I have in here is our COVID testing program. The district was allocated $59,568.81 for that to continue with our testing program. We may not use that, but we have it. If there's another spike, we are ready for it. So that money is available. We applied for it and we've gotten that. And lastly, but certainly not least, as they say, I'm recognizing during my administrative report, and I could have put it at the beginning, but I wanted to really emphasize the importance of this. Our School Nutrition Association, our School Nutrition Director, Jess Pina, has been nominated to be on the School Nutrition Board of Directors. And that is huge. It's not only huge for Jess, so congratulate her if you see her. It's not only huge for her, but it's big for the district. When they are recognized as on the board, they also recognize the district that they come from. So it's good for us. When she's at those board meetings, and she's also getting as much information as she can possible to bring back to the district as well. Someone's got to wave their hands. There you go. I can't, someone took care of it. So congratulations to Jess. I wanted to make that a portion of my board or my superintendent's report, because she's been nominated. Just the nomination alone is an honor for her to be on there, and I wish her well as she moves forward through that process. That's all I have for you, those 5 items. Is there any other questions on those 5 at all?
Ms. Tower?
I was just going to say that as a parent of a child in the elementary school, I ordered every piece of artwork that my son did. I got the pot holder, the apron, the clock, the mug, the t-shirt, and it was a picture of 4 cows in a meadow and cow pies. Little cow pies. I said, what's with the cow pies? He said, well, Mom, you like apple pie? That's just like cow pie. Like, it'll just remind you to make pie in the kitchen. So that was probably, I still have that up. It's probably the cutest thing that I have gotten from him at that age that was, organized, and it was done through the school. So I encourage all parents to take just a little tiny money and buy something super cute. But yeah, he now gets very embarrassed when I bring up the pie story. Yeah, I'm glad that that's happening again. That brought a big smile and memory to my face, Frank. Thank you.
Mr. Bryant?
It's got a nice timing too, Holly, with the art fair going on in the city, connecting that. They're going to use the money that they make off of this to make a mural, connecting again back to what the community is doing. So I really like that connection, and I wanted to make the board aware of that and the community aware that that connection between the community and the school is happening within our art classes and throughout our district.
Thank you.
But that's all I have, Ms. Ostendorf.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. Appreciate the Burnside Art information on the fundraiser. I think that's a great idea. I think it's wonderful having somebody that doesn't have small children, but those that do, I hope they take advantage of it. So on the online reporting, is there, this has to be set up ahead of time? Is that the plan? Because can anybody go in there and say a child is sick, or, I'm sure you're taking those precautions, but just like a phone call, they call in and say, hey, Billy's sick,
This is Billy's dad.
Yeah,
This is Billy.
you can do that, I get that. So I like the idea that email goes back, hopefully that the email is registered to a parent and that, so that's good. And lastly, congratulations to Jess Pina for getting that on the board of directors. Is this a Minnesota district, regional, national? What is that?
National.
National.
I think.
And,
Better make sure that I'm right there. Minnesota?
No, she's on the Minnesota board now. She's nominated to the national board, so it's a very honor.
wow.
Very cool.
Do they hold their meetings with technology nowadays? I'm sure they're more virtual than
Right.
flying to, or you gotta go or drive to, so what a wonderful thing to happen to somebody, to be on the national level of that, making those decisions, so hats
Right.
off to her.
All right, any other comments, questions? Ms. Robertson, did you want to share I saw you nodding when Mr. Bryant was talking about the student call-in.
There is yes, whatever URL you're plugged into, that's the email address that comes up. So you'll see the child's email, no, you didn't submit your own nonsense. And so then the call will be made to the parents.
There's some fail-safes.
There's some little,
I figured there was, but I think
we tested it.
with technology that it's just, I'm a big believer, use technology to your advantage to do things. And this is one thing, like Mr. Norton said, it'll save hours in a week and a month for somebody by doing this.
All right, we are on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would like to pull from the consent agenda?
We'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do you have a second?
Second.
A motion to approve the consent agenda by Ms. Tipp, second by Ms. Tower. Any discussion? Oh, we don't have discussion on? I can't remember, sorry. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Great, that carries 6-0. We're up to donations and grants. So we have several donations from United Lutheran Church, food and personal items to the Red Wing High School Food Pantry, and then monetary donations to the food pantry and hygiene products to the food pantry. So thank you to them. Red Wing Chevrolet, $1,010 for school supplies, Red Wing High School Food Pantry, and the Angel account. So thank you to them as well. We and the students always appreciate.
Right.
those
So make a
contributions.
motion to approve the donations as presented.
Second? Okay. We have a motion to approve the resolution accepting donations by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tift. Any discussion?
Thank you very much to all of them, as usual.
Yeah. Thank
Very nice.
you.
That will be a roll call.
Yep, and this will be a roll call vote because it's a resolution. So we'll start with Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Dierks,
Aye.
Ms. Towers.
Aye.
Ms. Tippett. Aye. And chair votes aye. So that carries as well, 6-0. Right. Next up is that policy 516. So as we talked about during the workshop, the request is to make an emergency revision to policy 516, allowing the school district to administer Narcan. And by doing this as an emergency policy, it would go into effect immediately without having to go through the second and third readings. It is only in place then for 12 months if we don't do those second and third readings. So that's the recommendation and request from the administration, is to approve that policy 516.
I move to approve policy 516 as presented.
I second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Towers, second by Ms. Buck. Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. Since we talked about the workshop was a different recording, I think we should probably have Mr. Norton discuss the purpose of this emergency policy implementation for people that follow.
Emergency.
So,
Yeah, Mr. Norton, go ahead.
Okay, so the revision to this policy is based on the availability of Narcan to counteract an opioid overdose on campus, anywhere on the school grounds. So it could be a student, or as Ms. Tower pointed out, it could be a visitor on campus. It could be anyone on the school grounds that is subject to an overdose of an opioid. Currently, the only person available on the school grounds is our school resource officer, and the only one available to administer that. If we didn't have more people to be able to administer it, we'd have to wait for an ambulance to arrive or the SRO to be able to travel from one of the other buildings to come to us. So what we're doing is putting into this policy, we will train and we will have available Narcan available to our nurses on all school grounds in each one of the buildings. So regardless of where the SRO is, we can administer that in a timely manner to be able to counteract the opioid overdose until we can, so that we can revive them, get them breathing again, and get them to the hospital. So that's the intent of this policy, is basically to, the revision to this particular policy is specifically about Narcan and its use on campus by our nursing staff. The emergency portion of this is that we want this in place. Mr. Derricks and others have expressed that we can't wait. If something were to happen within the next month, and we didn't pass this, then we wouldn't be able to have that training for our nurses to be able to deliver that Narcan. So we want to be able to train them as quickly as we possibly can. The emergency gives us that time to be able to do it. We'll bring this back to you in later readings. We won't wait that year, so that you can make this non-emergency and we can go through it. But at this time, we're asking you to approve it as an emergency amendment to policy 516.
very good. Thank you.
And the amendment or the revision in the policy is in accordance with Minnesota Statute 604A.04, Good Samaritan overdose protection. And then it's policy 208 is the, that allows for emergency adoption of a policy without going through second and third readings. So just to clarify those. Any other? Ms. Rowe?
I just wanted to say that I'm in full support of this, and I know I can't vote, but I just wanted to make sure that the public understands that I'm not voting this evening, not because I don't want to be, but we've had some issues where I physically could not get back up to the high school in time to be there in person. So because of that late notice, I can attend this meeting and chit chat with all of you, but I am not allowed to vote. So I just wanted people to understand that, but this has my full support, even though I won't be voting.
All right, so motion to approve policy 516 as presented, made by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Buck. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And that carries 6-0. Okay, continuing on with all of our policies that we have been going through. Policies 603, 604, 721, and 722 are up for their second reading. So we looked at these during a workshop, and now this is their second reading. Does anyone have anything they'd like to bring up about these at this time? Those will come back at our October 17th meeting for official approval. And on that vein, policies 515, 524, and 533 are on their third reading now. So those are up for approval. So we are looking for a motion to approve those revisions to 515, 524, and 533.
So moved.
Okay. Second. So there's a motion to approve revisions to policies 515, 524, and 533 by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Tibbs. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. That carries 6-0. Okay, next up is the program directors and supervisors' terms and conditions of employment. Martin, did you want to share information about this?
We got to take it off the table, don't we?
Oh, that's right. So at our last meeting, this was tabled to this meeting. So we need to make a motion to untable it. What's the proper
Bring
language?
it back before the,
Bring it back before the board.
I'll make a motion to bring back the program director supervisor terms and conditions of employment contract.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Mr. Bryant, second by Mr. Dirks to bring this back to the board for discussion. Any discussion about that? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Okay, that carries 6-0. So now we can talk about program directors and supervisors contract.
Okay, one of the things that the board, with the reason it was tabled in the last, at the last meeting was costing. And there was a question as to what the costing might be, what was budgeted for, and now what is the actual cost in the end. If I'm not mistaken, Ms. Rowe and others had questions about that at the last meeting. So Jackie put that together for me. I don't have the, and it's in your packet basically as to what that might be. Actually on right within the first page. The budget for the program directors and supervisors contract was $68,053, and that included what was in the actual contract. So in the contract was an increase of 2% and 2% year to year. There was also some minor changes within the language for days off for funeral leave. And then one of the changes was the first 5 steps were eliminated in that particular contract. So everyone starts basically at step number 6 in that contract and goes on from there. So the proposed budget contract, as I said, was $87,288, over $19,235 due to the elimination of those first 5 steps that I just talked about. So when you eliminate those first 5 steps, now everybody that was in those steps moves to the 6th one, and that is an increase. And then the proposed staff group changes within that. So as staff were given different responsibilities, the responsibilities then went for banding, and the banding came back with those responsibilities for increases. So those increases now are included in the change of the $19,235. So it's a combination of those two things. So Is there any questions on the funding portion? Because that was one of the things that you asked for last week. Or 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, at the last board meeting.
Ms. Tower, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I did ask for the funding on that, and this answers my question. So thank you, Frank and Jackie, for providing that information. My question wondering is, what specifically encompasses eliminating steps 1 through 5? What does that mean in common terms? Is
Jackie's
that
there.
just-
Jackie's there. She can speak to the numbers. But basically, there were salary. So in step 1, it was a certain amount hourly wage. And then in step 2, it went to the next hourly wage and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So by eliminating those first 5, you're basically jumping down to an area. That contract was old. So eliminating those first 5 steps allows, it's basically just by saying step number 6 now is step number 1, as far as a starting salary is concerned.
So the purpose was to increase starting wages to be more competitive.
So will it now say step 1, or will it still say step 6?
The contract right now says step 6. So it
Okay.
starts at step 6 and goes through step 15.
Okay.
So if you were on steps 1 through 5, you would have moved to step 6, but say you were on step 7 next year, you'll only go to step 8.
Don't people move all the time?
Every year, once a year.
I mean, within their own work, they could get a license, they could get a degree.
Not in this type of contract. So this contract does have some incentives for licensure and advanced degrees. They're in, I don't remember which section, but like an extra $1 an hour for a master's degree if your current job does not require a master's degree.
Section 3.4.
3.4. Or you could obtain another license, or for example, if our student support coordinators hold a principal's license, there's an extra so much an hour for them to do that. That's above and beyond the wage schedule. But someone could not move from group C to group B by getting a master's degree. That's more defined by their job description and the band that job description falls in. So if their job duties change and their position is banded at a higher grade, then they could move from C to B based on the grade. But it just by getting additional education, it can't move your lane.
So is this a negotiated group or not?
No, this is a terms and conditions of employment group.
So when we discussed last time about negotiations, there were no negotiations?
No, we solicit feedback from the group on what they would like to see, but there's no back and forth.
How do you solicit feedback?
We could ask them questions on, what kind of language are you looking for? Are you looking for wages? Are you looking for insurance? Is there things in here that you find problematic? But there isn't a back and forth that now we've negotiated and we have to do it. It's at the district's discretion on what we add in.
Okay, I have one more question on that, because I'm very fascinated by this at will versus a contract versus a
union.
collective bargaining. Yeah, so how do you seek input? Do you send an email to everybody in the group? Because wouldn't that be collective?
No, it's more casual conversation.
So you're at the water cooler and you're like, hey, you want more benefits?
Or we have a meeting with the group and solicit feedback. It'd be like myself and the superintendent, it would not be the board negotiating committee, would not be at the table, for example.
Okay, okay.
And they're,
Yeah. It feels
Ms.
like
Sauer,
this-
they're not a group, they're not a union group as to themselves, but they can certainly meet together to have conversations about what are we thinking about? Well, let's lean toward insurance as opposed to, extra days off or, those kinds of things. And then they might say, does anybody want to go talk about that or bring that to the superintendent's attention? Those kinds of things can happen as well within this group. But it isn't as if they have one person that's speaking on their behalf. Anybody can come and talk about what they might want to look at.
But not everybody works in the district office. Some people do and some don't.
That's correct. There's many people that work in the buildings, they work within the school system. I'll give you some examples. We have had people that work in the buildings come to the district office and inquire, where are we with our contract? What is happening with that contract? It's, all the contracts have been settled except for this contract. Where are we with that? Those kinds of conversations happen. Or when I'm out in the buildings and walking through the buildings and visiting schools, people might approach. I might actually approach someone and say, here's where we are, because I want them to be informed. I want to be transparent. Here's where we are in this whole conversation. Here's what was, brought to the board prior, and here's where we are now. So those conversation happens as well. But it is more informal, like Jackie was talking about. Mr. Bryant?
Walk us through why you eliminated the first 5 steps and how many people are in this group? And thirdly, how many people went from a 1 through 5 step up to, let's say 1 through 4, because 5 they would have went up anyway to 6. So.
Jackie?
Let's first start with how many people are in this group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
There's 8 across the top here.
Yep, and we have 2 student support coordinators. Actually 3 now.
And this one? Okay. So there's 8 in here, and there's 9?
9 and now 10 because we've hired an additional student support coordinator. That wasn't in the original group. We had 2 positions that moved groups. And how many people were in steps 1 through 4? There was 1 person in steps 1 through 4 that got the extra bump.
And why where did the conversation start about, eliminating those steps? Or what was the right reason for eliminating them?
Those conversations happened very early on, and I don't know if Mr. Norton was on staff yet. I think they happened in June, and I was not in on those conversations. I know we had eliminated steps 1 through 5 in many other contracts to raise the starting wages. I'm going to make the assumption that we did the same thing here.
And I was in the negotiations when we did the cooks.
Right.
Because we figured go down the road to another business in the community and make more an hour than they could here easily. We did that, and Ms. Rowe was on that with myself, and I apologize for not remembering who the third person was. Oh yeah, I get that, but I don't remember eliminating this many steps in any other contract. I could be wrong. But there's some pretty good dollar amounts here. So.
We did eliminate steps from several other contracts. Most of the time, so like with the food service, I can think of a lot of the time people were paid or like entered in at a higher step because of various reasons. So in actuality, not a lot of people were starting out at step 1 or 2, but because that was like the lowest wage, like when you would put like the ad to say the salary range is this to this, we had to put that lowest one. That's my understanding anyway, from like some of those positions where we had to put in what that lowest amount was, even though most people did not start at that lowest amount. And so then it made it less competitive for advertising purposes.
I guess the idea that, some of our steps are too low. I totally understand that.
So there were a few that were eliminated, like from cooks, and I'm not sure what others.
Yeah, we did that a couple of years ago, but I don't recall 5 steps just wiped away, and I don't know what was traded for that other than apparently they didn't negotiate any longer with us. Am I understanding that correctly?
The person that didn't negotiate?
The person that would negotiate on behalf of the school is no longer with us. Am I correct on that statement?
Correct.
There actually was no negotiation though, Jim, just in the comments, basically. So nothing was done with insurance with this particular group and was done with some of the other groups. This was strictly just eliminating those first 5 steps. And again, only 1 would have been in that. to be able to move. Everyone else was above that regardless. So it's really just to attract talent. It's to attract people in. It's having the impact basically is to be able to say, come work in Red Wing, and here's where you're going to start. Lots of people might have 5-6 years of experience in another district, and we would give them those years of experience regardless of them coming in, like Ms. Offendorf was talking about. They might walk in the door and say, you know, you have 5 years, I'm starting you on 6. But just having those first 5 inside there wasn't a whole lot of people that were starting in that particular area anyway. And 2 years ago, those 5 steps, just based off of inflation, eliminating those 5 steps also helped us, makes us competitive with what you're talking about, Amazon and those kinds of places.
Well, 19,235, sounds like only one person went up, so that person, there must have been some other costs then that associated with that. Maybe one of the negotiating teams. Oh, it wasn't.
No, there wasn't negotiating, but there was some where we had the positions rebanded, so they changed from like Group C to Group B. So that's included in that cost as well.
Thank you.
Ms. Dent?
I would like to make the motion to approve the program directors and supervisors contract as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So the motion is to approve the program directors and supervisors' terms and conditions of employment as presented. Motion made by Ms. Tiff, second by Ms. Buck. And I see Ms. Tower, you're in the queue. Discussion?
Correct. And I just lost my train of thought. Come back to me. Anybody else?
Lord.
Hey, hold on, I have a thought.
Any other discussion?
I'll talk a little bit.
Thank you. I'm saving me.
I'm struggling with this a little bit because I typically have voted no on our higher paid employees because our lower paid employees are getting the same percentage increases, and I don't feel what we're doing is right, that everybody should be based on percentage. Majority of this group falls into what I'm going to classify as the higher paid employees. Not the highest paid ones, but higher paid employees. They seem to be slightly above the teacher payment numbers. And I could be off on that, but certainly there's some teachers that are with all master's degrees and different things are up at the very high end of it. But I'm really struggling with this because I just trying to stay to my standards of trying to even this out, and I voted no typically on principals' contracts and other things. So when the vote comes, I'm not sure where I'm going to go on it. I'll have to decide at that point. Like I say, I'm struggling. I'm a little concerned. We eliminate 5 steps there. We got other bargaining groups that can't bring people in the door because they're not getting paid enough compared to what the market is. So I understand the situation. So am I rattled on enough? Do you know what you need to talk about, Holly?
Yes, I do this time, yeah.
Ms. Tower?
Thank you. So I'm kind of in the same camp as Arlen. I struggle with something that was done prior to you coming, Frank, simply because I don't know if it was fair. I don't know if everybody got to speak or if people knew people were speaking for each other, for themselves. So, but I'm new to this because I'm learning a lot about how at-will employees can talk to supervisors about pay increases. And for me, I like things linear. I like things, where you can go back and look at notes. And this just feels really, well, he said this back when he worked here, but he doesn't work here anymore. So we're going to go ahead with this. And I understand that there have been people waiting for these movements to take place because they have gotten the work done and they have been doing the extra job responsibilities that have been rebanded into their positions without this contract being solidified. That's worrisome too. I don't know if that's best practice to just go ahead and start with your new job responsibilities day one without taking it to the board, or you want to kind of help me
No,
with
I'm just
this?
thinking about the rebanding process and whether that's actually what's happening. Do they have new responsibilities, or it's already this is what they're doing, and that because they were doing these things before, that becomes a different group or a different band. Is that correct, Jackie? It's not that they were given new responsibilities.
yeah,
It's looking at their current responsibilities and putting them in the correct category.
Yes, it's a little bit of what you're talking about, but there are also 2 employees in here who, when this is approved, will be taking on new job responsibilities.
started them
They
yet.
have not started them yet. It's been waiting for this contract approval.
Okay. If it doesn't pass tonight, then what happens?
We, status quo.
What's status quo?
What we've been doing, they'll keep doing the job they've been doing as long as they've been here. And they
But I
won't
mean-
take on the new job
But I
responsibilities.
mean, as far as next steps, because we have to pass the contract at some point. Am I wrong?
It would come back to the board.
It would come back to the board. What would happen in the district office? More secret conversations, more out in the open conversations?
Do we know, is it okay if I
Yes.
say something? Okay,
Yes.
I'm just thinking about how the negotiation committee spoke with our previous superintendent about this. And the process was that there was back and forth feedback between the 2 of them, came to the negotiations committee, gave us the information. Now Mr. Norton is in that position, so I'm just wondering, Mr. Norton, if you have had similar conversations with those employees, how, I guess it's frustrating for me to think that these employees do not have the contract or will not receive this contract that they have, talked with the superintendent about over a period of time. And just because there's been a transition in superintendent, now these 10 employees don't get what they've asked for and have agreed upon. To some extent, it's not a negotiation, so it is a little bit different. But what they have been informed might be in place anyway. So I'm just wondering, Mr. Norton, do you agree that this is the direction we should be going with this contract as the previous superintendent put forward?
Oh, yes, I'd like to speak to a couple of them if I could. First of all, the elimination of the first 5 steps inside there. And if you're looking at the red line version of that and you do some of that math, I can just take Group A, for example, where they might be making 1 salary, and you divide the increase as $2.27 over those first 5. So step by step by step, basically, it's an average of about 40 cents different between each one of those steps. So each year, basically, they're getting another 40 cents an hour is what's, each one of those steps. So if that helps you to be able to say, you eliminated 5 steps, what was the point of eliminating those? That kind of hopefully draws a little bit of a picture that it's a difference of $2.27 between step 1 and step 5 in one particular group, not across all groups, but in Group A, for example. Just wanted to be able to help you with that. The other is that, yes, there are 10, to your point, Ms. Stiff, there are 10 employees that are waiting for you to be able to pass this contract. Some have been waiting over a year for this to be able to happen. So I will be bringing it forward again. If it does fail tonight, I'll be bringing it forward again. Now I need to have conversations as to what it is I'm going to do with those positions. If the position that is driving that is the first 5 steps, I'm not sure that I can go back on that. That's something that they already are aware of. If the argument basically is the 2 that are going to be moving within the groups inside there, those responsibilities have to go somewhere. So whether I put them with the employees who are moving within group from B to C or wherever they might be moving there, those responsibilities have to be performed. And so I would be giving them to someone, and then that someone would be banded and they would move as well. So the responsibilities are sitting there. We're waiting for them to happen. In the meantime, they're just sort of sitting in limbo right now, and they're with someone, being performed by someone that from the direction of the board, we don't want that person performing those duties. We need to move them. So this is the move that I'm in favor of. This is what I'd like to be able to, this is what I proposed to the board, and I'm hoping that we pass that tonight.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. I'm in favor of, I'm gonna vote in favor of this tonight because, one is you wanna have a salary to attract people, because these people are not all gonna be there. But I do not like the fact that somebody that was been gone for 3 months and 2.5 months afterwards, we bring something that this person negotiated. I did not like that one bit. And, it's not your fault. I just think I don't like it, period. Bill, vote in favor because I think we need to honor what was discussed with you. And we need to do it to be competitive in the market to attract people.
Mr. Beers?
Thank you. Clarify for me, what is a student support coordinator?
It is administrative support person in the elementary schools. So we do not have assistant principals in the elementary schools. We have student support coordinators. We have, instead of assistant principals, and we now have a student support coordinator that was hired for the 8th grade here at the high school.
So
So
what we're doing here is, if I'm understanding this correctly, is with the student support coordinators is we are replacing the need for assistant principal, or maybe not replacing is the right word, putting the people in this position rather than an assistant principal in certain buildings at a lower rate than what the assistant principal pay would probably be. Am I correct in that?
yes, and they do not have, they do not require a principal's license, therefore they cannot evaluate staff
Okay.
like an assistant
And you
principal
said one of
could.
these positions in 8th grade, so.
Yes.
What did we do at the high school exactly after we had 2 assistant principals and a principal? Do we still have that?
Yes, the high school proposed trading one of their counselor positions for a student support coordinator.
In addition to what we already have in principal and 2 assistant principals?
Correct.
So essentially,
I know we're weak on, in my opinion, student to principal ratios are very low at the high school we're dealing with 5 grades, 2 assistant principals and 1 principal, that's 5. When you go to middle school, you're dealing with three grades with 2 people. So I probably can jump on with this. I just wanted to clarify. So the additional staff is part of this increase of the $80,000, is that right?
Yes.
So we're adding a student support coordinator in that $80,000 price tag, is that right?
No.
From what we had before?
No, I costed the staff that were currently in the contract when we set the budget and moved them forward or changed lanes. So it would have been the staff we had back in June when the contract was originally proposed.
Into this position, are we replacing those the people that we moved out, are we replacing them with somebody else?
No.
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 So we're talking within this group of certain costs, but we're saving money on another area. Am I right?
yes.
If somebody moved from a
Yes.
student support.
Yes, and so if someone moved from a
and we
teacher
didn't
contract,
replace them, we had the savings of that salary,
yep,
but then we go here and we're having the additional cost.
yes. So if that person had been on a teacher contract before and we didn't replace that position and now they're a student support coordinator, those would wash out.
Thank you.
Ms. Tower?
So I had the opportunity to talk with Frank a little bit more in depth about this, so I can be informed about my decision this evening. It didn't sound like things, or when we use the word negotiate, that's not a fair assessment of how this group works. So I would like us to remove negotiate from it unless it's an actual negotiation. So that everybody has a fair voice and a fair opportunity to say, this is what I would like to be working towards. I think that's where it got really messy for me. And if Frank is saying, this is what we need in the district office, this is what we need for this contract to move us forward and be on a kind of clean playing field, so he can then manage people, we govern them, he can then manage the situations and the contracts. Because if we're asking people to do work that is not in their contract, how do you evaluate or manage somebody when they're saying, well, I'm not getting paid to do this work, but I do this work? So I really appreciate the conversation, Frank, and I know I told you that, but you helped really clarify it for me that we have to be real clear in our language about how we talk about our working groups. If it's a collective bargaining group, if it's a negotiating, or if it's not, it's people bringing concerns like, I really think I do a lot of this and I don't get paid for this. We don't have to be privy to all those conversations, but I look forward to you, Frank, bringing it to us in the future more clear so that this doesn't happen again. And I appreciate you're willing to explain it to me. So I will be in favor because I look forward to governing this whole process and not managing the process and people and did they do this? Did they not do this? Did somebody say this? I'm going to trust the process moving forward.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve the program directors and supervisors' terms and conditions of employment as presented. Motion is made by Ms. Tiff, second by Ms. Buck. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, that carries 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, so next up is upcoming meetings and future topics. And one thing that I totally forgot to bring up at the last meeting was superintendent search workshop. I forwarded the little flyer thing from MSBA.
I did get it.
So the cost is, I sent it like 2 weeks ago. You didn't get it then?
No, I did.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yep, I got it.
Virtually, it's $995. We would be looking at probably like November, December doing that. So does anyone have any strong feelings about that? I think it would be worth it to get their input about what we do, what would be recommended going forward, but Ms. Rowe?
I think it's money well spent. This is one of the biggest tasks that we have as a board is to hire our superintendent. And I want to make sure that we are thoughtful in our process. And I'd like to learn more about the options of the process. This has nothing to do with Mr. Norton or the job that he is or isn't doing. This has no reflection on you, sir, at all. But
Okay.
I definitely want to make sure that we are following a process that that we should be. And honestly, I've never hired a superintendent before, so I want to know more. I want to learn as much as I can about what we need to do, what we should be doing, what we have to be doing. And right now, I don't know the answer to any of those three things. So I think that we should invest in this process and move forward with that workshop.
Ms. Tower?
Thank you. So is this workshop, it's put on by MSBA, but do they talk about hiring different search firms per se, not just MSBA's search firm?
The title of the workshop is Hiring the Right Superintendent. So it includes whether or not to use a consultant, how to work with a consultant, setting a timeline, developing qualifications and selection criteria, involving stakeholders in the media, dealing with internal candidates, legal pitfalls, interviewing do's and don'ts, deliberating in public, and search options and best practices. So I think based on that, it would include what the options are for having them as a consultant, but it's not necessarily linked to them as a consultant.
I just want to be really clear about that piece. I don't want it to strictly be MSBA's recommending and we should just go with them as our search, or how do we open it up for other candidates or other search firms, or what does that actually look like? I don't want to be wasting time spearheading in just one arena, is my point. So if if it sounds like, or maybe you can do deeper conversation with them, or you already have, that it's broader than that, then I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Bryant?
Um, I mean, I've been pretty much strongly in my belief that Mr. Norton's our guy, person. Few things that, whatever, may sway me and whatever, but if you want to do the right thing, or do this thing, that's fine, but I think our job is, to evaluate him first before we start looking, decide if we want to look for another superintendent search. My thinking. We hired Mr. Norton as an interim basis. Things that I've heard from people are very positive about him. And I think for our community, want to get the right person. I hope he is that person. He's been on the job for 3 months, July, August, September or so. So, yeah, I want to be, if we're going to do this workshop, I want to be, do we actually have to, we talked about before as a group, do we actually need to do a search if we think we have the right person here?
So you're saying you don't want to be locked into this just because we do the workshop?
Well, yeah, maybe the workshop benefit us, but I just, from the flyer, I same concerns you have. Are they going to steer us towards using them as a search? But, I'm just one person. I think,
Knowledge is power, however.
so I got a question about the whole doing something on that. I got a question I want to move around anyway, so, but anyway, that's my thought.
Okay.
That's fine, but I'd rather evaluate Mr. Norton before we decide what to do.
Were you back in the queue? Okay, Ms. Buck.
I kind of agree with Jim. I do think that Frank's our guy. Also, when you say $900, I think in my head, what better can I spend $900 on? And in my head, I think it's, because I think we all have pretty good minds, hearts, spirits, and emotions where we can come together, for a permanent superintendent, to decide a permanent superintendent.
So you feel like.
I'm not all about following rules that have not done a soul justice in this district. So that's just my 2 cents. I have much better things to spend $900 on than a training to look for superintendent.
Mr. Dirks?
Thank you. Very confusing in a lot of ways that we wanted to start this search. Ideas before an evaluation is done, if that's what we're going to proceed on doing this. You also have a new board coming in, at least one new person, because I'm sure I'm not going to be wrote in. At least one new person on the board coming next year, and they should be partaking in that workshop if you're going to be doing it. But the drawback of it is the timing, because we need to get our ducks in a row, and if we're going to do a search, that is very early next year. So when I get all done, I think that if we're going to do this idea, I think the evaluation, if we're going to continue that on the plan of going December, which I'm not 100% on board, because I don't think we can get a feeling about what's going on, but it's still very new. I think Frank's done a wonderful job so far. But if that's what we're going to do, that evaluation, I think the workshop should follow the evaluation if people still feel they want to do stuff. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong paying some money for a consultant or somebody to tell you how to do certain tasks. But we don't seem to know what the task is going to be here yet. So I think it should wait. That's just me typing in. In the end, it's not going to affect me other than as a member of the community. wanting the best person in this position for my grandchildren and my neighbors and friends and their children. And so, yeah, I think it should wait till January if it's gonna happen.
Ms. Tower?
Wise words. Carlin, thank you.
Hmm?
Steps. I go back to the steps. What are the steps? We're gonna secure the evaluation October 17th. Then we're gonna give them a month and fill out the evaluation November 17th. And then we're gonna have a workshop, and then we're gonna evaluate the results. We're gonna have a closed session. We're trying to do a lot in, how many more meetings? 5?
Jim's the one that's right here.
You both are. Well, and Nikki was spot
Yeah.
on. $1,000. And to understand equity at its base, to bring it forward, you can get a lot for $1,000. You can get somebody pretty wonderful to come in and speak. I think you've opened up a really wise point. But what are our steps in doing this? Not that we don't want to negate a process piece, but what's our timeline? And I don't necessarily think we have a secure timeline. We have an idea that we can do the workshop in November or December, but what's the purpose of it? In conjunction with, is it just to get more knowledge? Is that the time we want to be spending during this crunch time of a lot of things, is to get more knowledge? Not to say we don't need it. We can always learn something. Or is it to secure our next steps going into the new year?
That was my thing, is that to secure those steps and to get that guidance as to, if we decide that we really would love for Frank to stay on, what's the best way to go about that? Like, can we just say, like, you know what, let's just keep you forever? Or like, is the best way to still have that process? What are the requirements that we have? And, is it best to have him apply with other people and take it into account? Or would it be best to, just offer it? So that was my thought, is to get that kind of guidance from MSBA of what the options are for that, like what we can and can't do and shouldn't do, what those best practices are.
Would that have to be a workshop, do you think, or could we invite MSBA to come in at our next workshop and we could ask our questions? I mean,
Maybe.
just because of time purposes? I mean, I really agree with your thought process on that. Not to push Frank and all of this work we've been doing aside, but to have, come in. What is the process? What's the legal procedure? What's ethical? What should we be doing in the next step, so we can have a final decision, not on New Year's, not on December 23rd, but we kind of can go into the new year with a plan in place or a decision made. So I'm maybe reversing it back to, maybe we should just do a call-in, $200. I don't know whether they give us a cut rate on the call-in.
Ms. Rowe?
Well, I hear what everyone is saying, but again, and I think you bring up a really good point, Nikki, about equity. And I also think that we need to think about this position in terms of equity as well. Are we being equitable and giving a fair shot to people across the country who may be really interested in this job? This is our opportunity to think about equity in this position as well. And again, Mr. Norton, this has nothing to do with you, positive, negative. I love having you here. And I don't disagree that you aren't the person for us. But what I'm saying is, if we automatically close the door and don't even open it up to other candidates, are we limiting ourselves equitably for that option and opportunity? We don't know the candidates that are out there who may be interested in applying. What if there's, somebody in a different part of the country who's coming to us from a completely different perspective, who might be the very greatest person? We just don't know. And so I would hate to close that door. The other piece of that is we have policies and procedures on how we hire everybody else in the district. And that means we post the position. this board, members of this board have been very upset when we have usurped that policy and procedure in the past. So to come and say we're going to usurp that for a superintendent, but I was really mad at everybody else who usurped it in the past, I think that puts egg on our face. That is not the right way to be doing this position. This position is too important for us to just say, let's just go with our gut feeling. Or I think we need to be very intentional about this process. I think we need to learn as much as we can. Again, $995 in the big scheme of things. Yes, there are many other things that I could spend that money on, that we could spend our money on. But again, this is our most important job that we have as a board, is to hire and supervise a superintendent. And I think I don't think that if we have MSBA come in, they're going to be giving us a sales pitch. I 100% do not think that that's what their goal is in coming. They're here to be a resource for us. That's why we are a member of that association. If we're turned off, I can't even imagine that they would come in and give us a sales pitch and say, use us. They will say we are a resource and we are an option. And here's where you can find all your other resources and options, but they're not coming in here trying to sell us something. They're trying to help us. I mean, that's what they're there for. So again, I am in full favor of doing the right thing, of learning as much as we can about the process, and making sure, I mean, I don't know what the legal ramifications are if we don't open it up or we keep it closed, or, you know, we're an equal opportunity employer. Are we? I don't know. I mean, we did open it up for an interim, but we haven't opened it up for superintendent. So I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And that's where I'll end it.
Ms. Howard?
Can we then come up, I don't disagree with you, Pam. I hear everybody with really good perspectives. Should we solidify a timeline here then, moving forward, instead of waiting for 2 weeks to do a timeline on what we should be? Because it could be a question and answer with MSBA about the next steps. Like, what does it mean to extend an interim superintendent position? What does it mean to, how, but I agree with you in terms of hiring somebody and following their own process. Absolutely. I don't disagree with you on that. But what does that mean? Do you post an interim superintendent position again? Do you post, so I don't know what the timeline looks like. All I'm saying is that we have 5 meetings left before the new year, and we told Mr. Norton, in all fairness, that we would have his evaluation done by December. Are we now saying that's not going to happen?
Ms. Buck?
I like Holly, I think we should just get his evaluation done first. Go step by step instead of jumping ahead, jumping back, jumping ahead. And from the last time I thought that once he went through his interim, then we'd open it up and he'd get an opportunity. And there was never a thought that we would just say, yes, we're going to keep Frank. That he would have the same shot to apply for the permanent position as anybody else. So I don't see why that has anything to do with MSBA and hiring them to get more knowledge. I'd actually like to see if there's any other companies that do trainings the same, competitive. Because I just had mold removed and I had to try and get so many different bids. And in Red Wing, that is really hard, not gonna lie. So, I like the opportunity of getting beyond, get pricing,
So
if we're gonna do that, but I would like to maybe go through the steps first. You said timeline, perhaps, of when we could possibly do that training, but I'd like to get through the evaluation first.
I think even if we do the evaluation first, we would still need to have kind of the next steps laid out of if we're going to have MSBA or somebody else, kind of give us guidance. The longer we go past December, the more limited that candidate pool is gonna be. So if we're opening it up for applications, which I think was my understanding too, that's what we would do, that would happen, early on in the year, the closer we get to the end of the school year, the smaller that candidate pool is, because people have other jobs, other places. So, I think we need to be planning as though we're gonna have, the whole interview process and get set up for that. And if Frank ends up being the person that we hire out of that would be wonderful. But if not, we need to kind of have those things planned out so that we're not in January deciding, if in January we decide we want to have MSBA come in, they might be booked up until February. And then we're that much further down the line. Do you know what I mean? So.
I just want to say something really quick, Jim, and hold on just one thought. I do know of another search firm, and they said they do it for free. I just remembered that I talked to them.
Like
Really?
what you need to do kind of.
Yeah, they said they would do
information
it for free.
Okay.
Because I talked to, the gentleman who works for the search firm, because I know him from St. Paul. He's like, yeah, we would come in and give you a free workshop on what you need to do to hire a superintendent. It just came to me. So there is another firm. There are other firms out there. MSBA is a resource for us. It's our, Chamber of Commerce kind of deal. But there are other places, and I can reach back out to the person and ask if they'd be willing to do, a question and answer free kind of situation where we wouldn't have to go through all of the MSBA steps, but just on a workshop sooner rather than later, can you, do an hour phone call with us?
Sure. Yeah, I think if you want to get the information, that'd be great.
Okay.
Mr. Bryant?
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay, you're fine. No, I think a number of schools will start looking in January because somebody will announce their retirement. So I don't think the pool is that much lesser if you will do it in January or February. I mean, our superintendent left us in May. So they're out there applying, finding candidates that meets their needs. So I still want to go through, get the evaluation done, and then decide if we want to, from there, decide if we want to take the next step to actually doing the superintendent search. Because evaluation may come back glowing, and may come back mediocre, and may come back poor, we don't know. So I'm willing to wait until we get through the evaluation. And if we need to do a search in January, because the new board will probably come on anyway, should have that search. A new board member or 3, doesn't matter who's on there, but it is.
Okay. Well, if you can get information, Ms. Tower, then we can talk about this again, possibly next meeting.
And will you follow up with the MSBA to say they could do a similar thing, just a question and answer type
Yes,
thing?
I did send her an email just now because I was writing down the concerns as I was hearing them, and asked if that was an option. So,
And then to see if the possibility of doing it January, beginning of January, if that's a decision that we'd like to wait until after the evaluation, if we could do it in January. So,
yeah. Okay, other things, so the upcoming meetings, I also have things that have not been scheduled, discipline and PBIS as a topic, bullying and harassment and SEL throughout the district. November, December, it's not on the plan yet, but the World's Best Workforce and MCA information, Nikki's comment about the Equity Committee Compass process, and then our board self-evaluation. I have a thing from MSBA that came back from that, so I will send that out, and then we can just have a little conversation about that at one of these future meetings. So, other things? Yes, Mr. Bryant?
I think the GCED special education programming discussion is going to probably take a while, because I think we're all trying to understand that.
Mhm.
My suggestion would be if we move that to December 5th, because all we have right now is finance focus. Oh, you have the truth and taxation, but that's on a regular meeting. And then the MCAs we talked about, I would just as soon see that at a regular board meeting, a presentation and filmed here what is it now, this October? No, one of the first, next meeting or the following meeting, so we have that information for our parents and citizens.
I know Mr. Norton has been working with representatives from GCED about those different topics for like the 17th and the 7th. So I'm not sure like what has been scheduled already with them.
I'm just thinking that, I know the Wells Fargo OPEB trust review will take some time. You can come right in here or they'll do it virtual. So I just don't want to shortchange something that important.
Mhm. I highly agree, because I have a lot of input to put in about special education.
I see it just move back to a timeline, a timeframe that we can meet that.
Okay. Any other?
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, then I think we are looking for a motion to adjourn.
So much for a short meeting.
Short, so good.
Yeah, it is.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion to adjourn made by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tower. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. That carries 6-0. We are adjourned at 7:31.